And we are live, boys. All right. So for anybody tuning in live, or if you're watching us after the fact, thanks for joining us. As always, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate any feedback as well. So leave comments, like our video as well. That really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. But basically, if you've stumbled across this, we're essentially going to be doing a little bit of a review of Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro and their, 6 years with the Blue Jays. We have Charles joining us today, who I have to say right off the bat, you're the most prepared guest that we've ever had. I've never been sent a spreadsheet in advance, and I felt like, shoot, I have to go over this. I have to see what I'm looking at because like this guy's put in so much work. So, Charles, appreciate the work you've put into this. I'm sure this is going to be a great episode. Guys, I don't know where you want to start. I don't know if you want to start with like current season, what the Jays are looking at. They're still, I think, 4.5 games back, which is what they were at the last time we talked Blue Jays. Thoughts? Let's go around. Let's start with you, Charles. Thoughts on playoffs? Is it a pipe dream, or is it happening?
So I have been saying since the start of probably last week that this is the make or break week. I always felt, and I say that just in terms of beating up. Hopefully, we were hoping to beat up on Baltimore. Won the series, but we should have swept them. And then now going into, or rather, Oakland's coming here. I think that is a series that we need to win. And if, wishful thinking, we sweep, it's not going to happen. But, that would get us in the position. I think if we lose this series to Oakland, we're probably too far behind to catch up because we start getting into the Yankees next week and it just goes down from there.
We got the Yankees. You got 6 games with the Rays this month.
They've got 14 games against Baltimore and the Twins.
The challenge with the Twins is that those games are on the 17th onwards, so by then it might be too late.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need to face, like, if you had the Twins next week and then the Orioles, that would be nice. Get them back in. But you got a lot of games with the Yankees and the Rays before you get to the Twins.
So if you guys were betting guys, Azam, are you putting money on the Jays to make the playoffs or not really?
I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to Jays. I think they'll make the playoffs.
Really?
Even though has them at 9%. Okay. They've got to start. Okay, they've got to beat up Yankees this after the Athletic series. So, I mean, the next 2-3 series are key. Boston, unfortunately, is winning against Tampa. I was hoping it would be a clean sweep. It's tough, realistically, but I think they can squeeze in.
Seattle is still, I mean, they just won 2 against Houston as well. They're still in that mix.
Yep.
It's a lot of teams to leapfrog. We've got to jump over 4 teams to get there.
And I guess that's going to be it, right? For the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching while you're watching the Jays game, right?
Exactly.
That's almost the worst thing because, like, it's sure you got to win, and if you win, like, great, but it's still out of your control in some sense because you're relying on so many other factors to fall into place for you to make the playoffs to begin with.
And and it's one game. Right now, you're going for realistically, it's the second wild card, likely in New York City.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about it. If the Jays don't make the playoffs, and I guess this kind of leads into our conversation about the Atkins, Shapiro, or Shatkins era in general. Like, is not making the playoffs this year really the end of the world? Aren't they a little bit ahead of schedule anyways? Like, making the playoffs last year was kind of like that was icing on the cake. Like, it wasn't really supposed to happen. I think going into the season, especially because it was a weird season anyways, nobody really expected that much, and making the playoffs was nice. And sure, they made some moves. Again, I'm looking at it, and this is me as a casual fan. I'm sure some hardcore fans are going to have completely different views on it, but it's nice if you make it. But I mean, it's not really the end of the world. It's not a black mark on the work that these guys have done over the past 6 years, is it?
No, I will say I think not like this is a team. They're in a situation where this is the year or they have to blow it up. The core is still young. It's still cost controlled. They have about 60 million plus locked in for next year before any arbitration raises. So let's say with arbitration, then that takes them over 100 million. So there's still going to be money to spend in the off season. Now, unfortunately, some of that money has to be spent on retaining Semien and Ray if they're going to go down that path, and they look to be very expensive. So a lot of your money is going to be spent on maintaining the team, not making the team even better. But I mean, the farm system is deep. They got some bad money coming off the books, like Roark off the books, Shun Yamaguchi off the books. $4 million that Tulo got paid this year is going to be off the books. So they got some money coming off. I mean, Steven Matz had a good year, but I don't think they're going to bring him back. I think the rotation, like, you got to focus on Ray, and then you could plug Stripling in as your number 5. So no, like they are set up to go in a lot of different directions and be active. And from what the Atkins interview on the Prime Time or Bob McCown podcast, whatever he calls it, it looks like they're gonna have flexibility. I think for once, Rogers looks to be willing to put in the big money here.
Yeah, when Bob McCown brought up the $200 million number, it didn't really look like Ross Atkins kind of he didn't bat an eye. Like he seemed okay with the fact that or convinced of the fact that the Rogers would be willing to spend some money to improve or to keep some of these guys. If you guys are like thinking about it, and this is getting a little bit ahead of it, but are Ray and Semien here next year?
At best, one. At best, one.
If I were to flip a coin, I think it's Ray over Semien is staying.
I would agree.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I think none of them stay.
Looking at the needs, right? Like looking at the need. I mean, offense is still pretty good. Obviously Semien's been elite this year, but I think there's a much greater need. In the starting rotation, if you look at it, Ryu, 2 more years remaining. It's probably a really good 2. It might not be a 1. You have Berrios, and then you have Manoah, who's still young, and then number 5 is still a question mark. So I think it would make more sense to go with someone like Robbie Ray. And Ray's young. I think it's going to be his age 30 season next year.
He'll
get paid if he wins the Cy Young in the AL.
That's the thing. He's going to get paid. And the question is, it's a mix of longevity and dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And you start looking at, do you give a 30-year-old pitcher a 6-year contract? Because that's what he's going to want.
I think I'd be happy if he gets a 6-year contract. I hope it's not going into that 7, 8, 9 year Garrett Cole territory, right? I'll be happy with 6.
Yeah. I don't think he would go into the 7 because he doesn't have that body of work. I mean, Scherzer is finishing a 7. I think Scherzer might be the only pitcher that ever got a 7-year deal that the team ended up getting full value.
Yeah,
like every other guy's blown out. So I don't think Ray has enough of that track record to get that 7, but 5 or 6 maybe. Maybe he gets an opt-out in there as well. So, yeah, that's definitely possible.
Well, see, the thing is that who are the free agents next year, right? Most of the top guys are the older ones. Like you have Greinke, Scherzer, Kershaw. I don't know. Did he sign an extension? I don't know, but Verlander. So, by default, he becomes the number 1 target.
And he's a lefty and all that.
And he's a lefty, and he's proved himself in the AL East, which I don't know how much that counts for, but I mean, it should. It's a small ballpark, so he's done pretty well. So,
yeah, I mean, I think just looking here, Gosman. Is Gosman? Yeah, 2020.
Gosman's 2 years older. Older.
Yeah, he's 31. Stroman, Osman. You have Charlie Morton, but he's older.
I think Ray's probably the youngest of the lot because he's even younger than Stroman.
Yeah, Ray's 91 born, so he'll be 30. I don't know if he's turned 30 yet, but he's going to be.
No, I think he's October.
Okay, so he's turning 30. So yeah, so he and Stroll, and then so that's a pretty old. Like it's not. I mean, the big names are older, so I think of the prime guys in their prime, he's the
target.
He's the best. Him, Stroman, and Gosman are going to be the biggest names in terms of longer term deals.
Yep.
Is it catastrophic if they're unable to bring back either of the two?
Depends on what they do. If they can get anybody else in, and if they go the trade route. Like let's say, I'm just putting this out there, they pull a trade off for Jose Ramirez. They're fine. If guys become available and they go big game hunting in the trade market. Yeah. So ultimately it's really going to come down to what they go into camp with. Like what, if those guys go, can they maintain that production somehow?
I think they hedged their bets a little bit by getting Berrios because he's under contract for one more year. So they will. So let's say if neither of them comes back, you're going in with Rio, Berrios, and Manoah as your 1, 2, 3. Decent, not ideal, but it's pretty decent. So then do they go look for a really good, I don't know, 4 or a 5 like a Mats and then load up on offense?
Or do they go after one of those older guys on a short-term deal?
Yep. Well, Scherzer wants to stay on the West Coast, so I think he might re-sign with the Dodgers. So that leaves. I don't think Kershaw's going to leave either, to be very honest.
So you're looking at like what, Greinke.
I think they changed tune and just focus on Steven Matz. That might be the guy that if they lose Ray, they focus on Matz.
Yep. So if you're talking about Mats, then you have a couple of other guys, right? Like Carlos Rodon, Eduardo Rodriguez. Those guys are free agents. Gosman's a free agent. Maybe he might be cheaper. He's had a pretty good year in San Francisco. So
Stroman?
We tried to sign Gosman last season, didn't we? We made him an offer. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a target again. So
no, for sure, absolutely.
Yep.
I don't know how San Francisco put that starting rotation together, and they're doing as well as they did. But yeah, Gosman's a big piece.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Any surprises?
Off season, I think we can say that. I do believe this will be their most active off season as of yet because of the free agents that they have, because of where they are in the standings, and they're ready to like sort of make they're ready to really get active. Like you can trade from catcher, you can they have traded out a lot of prospects really recently, to be honest with you. Not the top guys, but I mean only Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson. So they have and this sort of transitions into what we're going to talk about, the criticism that Atkins and Shapiro had going back to Cleveland is that these guys hold on to their prospect too long.
It's a small market mentality.
Exactly. So I think that's where people at times still go with that assumption that this is what they're doing and they're not going to go. I'm like, you spent money on Ryu, you spent money on Springer, you traded the number 5 pick last year to get Berrios. Like, the pick that you tanked for the year before. I mean, I think that sort of stigma should be they should be free of that stigma now.
Well, and so I guess one thing I was looking at when I put together the aforementioned spreadsheet is the theme that kind of popped out to me is obviously here comes Atkins and Shapiro after 2015. Obviously, every Blue Jays fan knows what 2015 was. Whether it's an official quote or not, there were, rumors that Anthopoulos was like, "Oh, I would have tried to re-sign David Price," and Atkins didn't even make him an offer. All of that, and so those type of things just already start coming in with a new management after Anthopoulos is looked at as the grandmaster of putting together that 2015 team, and then 2016 ALCS again, and that they blow it up because they've got an aging team. We understand that, but a lot of Jays fans from the outside, and I'm not trying to be holier than thou, but people that aren't following it as closely just see back-to-back ALCS and expect, bring Bautista back for another $100 million, bring Edwin back, bring this and that, and yada yada. And now, what I will say though that didn't help, and I mentioned it in my spreadsheet, is the second thing they did in the 2016 offseason is they signed Kendrys Morales. And then, after 2015, they signed J. Happ, which turned out to be a good signing. But again, it was looked at as, oh, well, we can't afford David Price. Let's get the diet version. And who's the other lefty that's out there? We can't afford Edwin. Who's the diet version? Oh, it's Kendrys Morales. So, it was those type of things. And to me, my opinion is the tipping point was signing Ryu. And showing, well, first it's a Scott Boras client, and all of a sudden showing we're willing to make a splash and put out this whole idea that we're just going to get all these small pieces and try to fill in the blanks and actually go out and get a big signing. And then obviously Springer, and then as Pramit just mentioned, the Barrios trade was another huge piece. So I think they've shaken the whole small market. I would hope they have at this point now. And we'll see. I'm excited to see what they will do this offseason if they continue this.
No, I agree. The one thing I would say is, although there were a few missteps, but I think sometimes this front office has been unfairly criticized for a lot of things that, because I think this is something we discussed in the podcast. These guys have pretty much done what they've always said they'll do. Like, like they haven't been, like, they've been pretty forthcoming, right? So if you think about 16, Pramit and I have talked a lot about that they should have blown up in the 2017 season. I always felt it was kind of hard to blow up right after coming off an ALCS. It's really hard to blow up. So I think what they probably tried to do was, okay, we know we're not going to contend with this aging core forever, so let's just try and plug some holes. So hence the Kendrys Morales. Let's not commit 60. Although, in all honesty, they offered Edwin the same contract that he ended up signing with Cleveland. So, I mean, they did make him an offer. Edwin was expecting a $100 million contract or something, and he turned it down. They went in and signed Morales, and Edwin signed exactly the same contract.
Edwin chose the nicer city.
Interesting about the Edwin contract. During one of the lockdowns, I was watching the wild card game watch party, and they had a reporter from ESPN. Can't remember her name. She's she's Spanish speaking, and she knows a lot of the Latin American players.
Is it Jessica Mendoza?
No, not Jessica Mendoza. There's somebody else. Like she's it's not Mendoza. I can't remember who it was. But anyways, maybe it was Mendoza. No, I don't think it was Mendoza. No, because Mendoza was born in America. This reporter had an accent. I think she's Puerto Rican. So, but she had said that Edwin says that they never really tried to make him an offer, or they never really did reach out. So I don't know what the deal is. Is that just Edwin just wanting to take a shot
save
at
face,
or save face, or I don't know what the deal is. So it's interesting, and I think to get back to Osmond's point, I agree with going into 17 trying to get one last shot at it. I mean, if you're selling out the freaking stadium, like
we're gonna trade Joyce.
I think the difficult part was that, and this is not on them, I would say that I don't think ownership adequately gave them the payroll at the time to maybe go be more little. Trade market would have been hard because they just had a depleted farm system. So you just didn't have much to deal with. But have they been allowed to spend more in free agency to maybe not necessarily get you don't have to go after the elite free agent, but someone that's better than scrap heap or like plugging holes. It could have helped them out. They would have been in better shape for 2017. And I think after 2017, I think that's where I would say is the biggest misstep. If the rumors are true about what the Cardinals offered for Donaldson, I think that 2017 offseason, they could have made the call like, okay, like this is not going to, instead of going for it for 2018.
Is it 2017 or 2018?
After 2017. So they bring in Morales and Steve Pierce, and they had a pretty good rotation going into the year on paper. Like, yeah, Stroman, Estrada, Sanchez, Happ and Liriano was expected to be good. Like, they were expected to have a good rotation that year. And then guys got hurt. Like, Estrada fell off a cliff. Sanchez with a blister problem.
Well, even Bautista fell off a cliff, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, even if they had spent money, they probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
Yeah, they wouldn't have got anywhere, except that maybe they could have later on flipped those guys for some better prospects, potentially. Yeah. But I think after 2017, where the mistake was that Boston and New York were clearly ahead of them. They both had younger cores. I mean, so Boston adds New York adds Giancarlo Stanton. Boston adds
JD Martinez.
JD Martinez, and we go get Grichuk and Aledmys Diaz and Jarvis Solarte. Like, this isn't gonna work.
There's a little bit of a gap between those the quality of players there.
Grichuk,
but it's just funny how sometimes the winning, like especially recent winning, will work against a front office and completely change how a fan will look at things. Like, you can even see it with the Raptors fan base. We win a championship. We have a tough series against Boston in the playoffs, and then, COVID year, and all of a sudden everybody forgets the good that happened. Or in the case of the Jays, like it wasn't exactly an easy, like there was no easy fix, I don't think, for that roster at that time. And like nobody remembers that. They just remember, wait, we were just in the playoffs a couple years ago, and now look where we are now. Like these guys are terrible. Yeah. Same thing with Masai. Like I've seen some criticism about Masai on Twitter where people are like, this guy's lost it. No, he hasn't. He really hasn't.
So I will say, with the Raptors, obviously they're still building around Fred VanVleet and OG, and they kept some of the core, some of the guys that were doing with the Blue Jays. It almost gave the appearance that when they came in, they traded anybody and everybody from that team. The one that stands out to me was the Aaron Sanchez, Joe Biagini, there's somebody else in there, trade.
Cal Stevenson.
Thank you, Cal Stevenson, for Derek Fisher. And I remember that trade deadline, Stephen Brunt asking Ross Atkins, did you have to throw in Joe Biagini? Was that needed as part of the deal to get this done? And Atkins would not answer the question. And instead, all he kept doing was going back and talking about, we now have 72 years of control. We have rebuilt the farm system. I'm getting, you guys are basketball fans, I'm getting OKC vibes.
OKC,
they blew it up and they got all the prospects, and it's like, but that was it. It was almost like they intended to, anybody that was part of that team are not part of the future. I personally, at the time, wanted the Jays to keep Stroman. I said, sign Stroman to an extension and build around him. Make him, he's not our ace, but maybe he's our number 2, number 3. And he's still, I mean, if you go look, he's still put up, he's at 2.4 ERA or something. I'm not gonna look at the FIP and all the other numbers that he's got, but I'm just going from memory. It's like Stroman's been pretty decent with the Mets. And it was just very much, and that was another one that was criticized, right? That Stroman left in a huff and this and that. And it was almost like, you know what, out with the old, in with the new, and we're going to do it our way. Which I think gave that picture and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
I think that's fair. And I think a lot of times the way Atkins speaks probably rubs people the wrong way as well. But again, if I were to play devil's advocate, I mean, 17 was the year they just tried to we just like just because you're coming after an ALCS, you go through a year. You just went through 2 years in the wilderness. 2020, you're back in the thick of things. So even let's say if it was a normal year, right? So what they did, they had a pretty good blueprint of, and if you really think about it, the guys they traded away, I mean, the ones they acquired didn't work out either. But the ones they traded away, like Biagini threw 4 innings last year, and he's not in the major leagues this year, right?
None of them are.
None of them.
Stevenson is in Tampa's system now.
Yes, and Sanchez started well, got hurt, hasn't come back. I don't know if he has come back.
Sanchez?
Yeah.
He got DFA'd.
He got DFA'd. So, yeah. So I was really upset. The one I agree with you 100% is I thought Stroman was the one they probably could have signed. It would probably solve for a lot of their headaches. But I think they would. I think one of the things was that they had a lot of these young kids similar age coming up at the same time. I think they just were very, very keen on a specific type of culture.
I agree.
And they wanted it built around these guys without any hangups. And I think that was one of the reasons, whether you like trading Josh Donaldson or Stroman, is like, let these kids be themselves, and they've come up the minors together, let them grow in the majors together. And I think it sort of has worked out pretty decently. I mean, there've been a lot of missteps along the way for sure, but I'm
curious. I'm curious about one thing, because a lot of the trades or signings, some of them just don't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And I'm curious, and this is just me spitballing as I think about this. How much faith does the front office have in our coaching staff that they can turn a player around? And I think, again, I'll go back to the Derek Fisher, who was I think he was a round one draft, and he was supposed to be pretty good in Houston and just didn't get it. And then, or your Billy McKinney's, your Chris Coughlin's, your guys that just did not succeed anywhere, and then re-sign them. You would hope, obviously, there's a glimmer of hope somewhere in there that, this guy was a prospect once upon a time, maybe my team. Or is it just very much, I'm going to dump them and this is who they offered and it's better than nothing?
That's a good question. I think the mentality was, their take was, all right, we're in a rebuilding mode, and part of rebuilding isn't just getting young players or getting these reclamation projects or getting guys that mid upper 20s that may not have fulfilled their potential. So if we get a bunch of them, and if maybe one or two pan out, then we're good. In terms of their coaching staff, I think they have a lot of faith in Pete Walker. I don't know so much about. I mean, obviously, we're not there. I do sometimes question Luis Rivera, to be honest with you, because for the infield coach, I'm like, the only time they've ever had a good. Now, I get that they haven't always had, it's personnel driven too, but the only time they've ever had a good defensive team was when they had Tulo, Donaldson, Russell Martin, and or Goins or Travis, and these guys were veteran guys. Maybe not Goins to Travis so much, but the other guys were established defenders. It's not so I mean, Bowles had some of his challenge. We've had challenges at second and third this year. Again, I don't know how to assess the coach because we're not there. Yeah. But I have always wondered. He survived the Gibbons turnover, so there has to be something there, right?
And I think that you guys raise a good point. So I think there's a lot of trust in the player development system for sure. And if you look at it, they acquired a lot of similar looking guys, guys with more or less the same profile. Corner outfielders with some power, not necessarily great on. So if you see, they went after Derek Fisher, they got Billy McKinney, they got Teoscar Hernandez is also one of them. He's the one who kind of panned out amongst the 4 or 5 that they acquired. But they were looking for a certain profile, it seemed, because all the guys that they traded for, no one was a speedy defensive center field. They were primarily corner outfielder guys they were looking for, with the exception of McKinney. And sorry, not McKinney, Brandon Drury, who was more of that could have thought would be a super utility guy or something.
Yeah.
Didn't pan out. So I mean, yeah. I don't know how much was Teoscar Hernandez himself. How much was the player development?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as I was reading some of the history. So a guy that's done well, just kind of fitting in, obviously not a star in any way, but is Valeric. And I saw it, and it's like we claimed him off waivers from the Yankees. San Diego claimed him from us. We claimed him back from San Diego. Like, it's a guy that's kind of bounced around. It's like, all right, finally we'll give him a chance. And hey, here we are. And it worked out.
Yeah. Oh, we're forgetting one name, Socrates Brito.
Oh, yes.
Whoa.
Best
Now,
name.
I think he was brought in for them to help them. I think that 2019, that first half was clearly a tank job. I think they won it, and then they're going to call up the guy like Bob Bichette, Biggio, and others in the second half. But I mean, 2019, for all intents and purposes, was a pure tank year. I mean, every game after the trade deadline was you had Trent Thornton as your ace, or ace. I use air quotations.
Yeah.
Every game was a bullpen game. Like,
and something's worked out. I forgot that we got Espinal from Boston for Steve Pierce.
That was
I saw that on the list. That was definitely a good move.
And it worked out for both of them. Steve Pierce went and won the MVP, the World Series MVP with them. So, hey, that worked out for Boston, and it worked out for us. And Espinal's actually been a really good player for us, just a utility guy coming off the bench. He's not even a starter, but once you give him a bat, and I think he's earned the role to be a starter, truthfully, but that's a whole other discussion.
But another small move is that may, sorry to cut you off, that may end up panning out. We don't know yet. Is the David Phelps for Thomas Hatch. I mean, some think he could be in the rotation. I mean, I don't see it as much. He could be in the bullpen, but even still, you're getting a guy that could be a good arm for you for a number of years. So some of them, these are all. It's like penny stocks in some cases, right? You just hope that a few of the guys stick, and that's.
Or in John Axford's, it's $1.
That one actually, they won the deal because Axford didn't blow out his arm or something again.
So sad. So sad.
But Azam, you mentioned it. Like they were really in the wilderness for 2 years, and when you look at it after, most look at the Marlins, since that's my best comp. Like the Marlins in 2003 win the World Series, blow up the team as they did in '97, and where have they been since then? Like there are a lot of teams that don't recover that quickly from a complete overhaul of their roster, and for them to have made the playoffs last year, I mean, sure, I guess, but and this year to be in the running, like that's a pretty quick turnaround, and not a lot of franchises are able to do it that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you're still playing meaningful baseball, right? You at least there's some hope, like even if it's minimal and you may not make it, but at least if you go through to mid-September knowing that there's a chance, then at least it's been a decent season, right? And then again, they might end up with 87, 88 wins. Any other division, they might even win the division.
Right? Yeah, we're fourth.
I mean, Central is horrible. The White Sox have a losing record against teams above 500. They're just beating up on Kansas City and Detroit and Minnesota. Like, I mean, it's true. And they ran into this a couple of times. I remember that 2008 season, they won 86 games and finished fourth.
That's the year Cardinals won the World Series with 82 wins, right?
No, that was 2006. Actually, the Jays did win 87 that year, and they finished second, but they didn't they didn't get the wild card.
Yeah.
But the Cardinals won the World Series with fewer wins. So they're in good shape. I mean, I do believe it. I think it will be disappointing if they don't get in, because a few weeks ago they were really surging when they came back, and that road trip was just horrible. I mean, they lost games they should have won, and I think also there is that feeling that they've blown so many winnable games. Like it's not like they're being out talented or like they just don't have a shot. Like it's whether it's the little things like just not having enough depth in the bullpen, partly because of injury, or the lineup top of the lineup being too right-handed heavy, so it's easier for managers to match up relievers against them. Those little things they've done a very good job at a macro level, but the next step is to sort of take care of the micro level issues on the team.
So that surge was great to watch, and the most frustrating aspect of it is I don't think we gained a game on Tampa. I think they went on the exact same surge, and I think we actually might have even lost a half game on the Yankees because they went on an even better surge.
Yeah, that was the part that really was frustrating. Like you couldn't catch a break. They were like 8-2 in last 10, and you look up and everyone in the division is 8-2 with the exception of Boston.
Exactly.
So one area of criticism I will say is that now, again, I think overall they've done a good job. I mean, I think on other things that people like, look at the player new complex. They got that done. That thing is amazing. That building like blew me away. The spring trade and redoing the Dunedin Stadium. They've done a lot of overseen a lot of things, and it's true. Like professional players, it could end up. I mean, I don't think it's not going to like free agents aren't going to line up to come here because, oh, look at that complex. But I think that it will definitely help.
It definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've done that. They've overall, I mean, the system is good. I mean, I think the issue with them is that when they strike out, they strike out bad. Like there's no like middle, like, oh, like it wasn't, he was fine, but not as good as like you've had a Roar. Like that was a complete $24 million hole, or whatever prorated amount he got last year. Chase Anderson again. You didn't give up anything for him. You gave an orange player up for him, but that was a flop. I'm trying to think of some of the other
the ones that come to mind, and this is just more of a selfish thing because they were a thorn in my side from just playing fantasy baseball once upon a time or things like that. Tanner Roark is a perfect. I couldn't stand him before, and then we signed him. And I was like, of course. Bud Norris. I'm going back a bit, but Matt Latos was probably the one that I thought was probably our worst signing that we ever did. I'm being obviously dramatic because I just was not a fan of the guy, but there's been a lot of question marks in there.
Yeah, Kendrys Morales. I mean, he wasn't horrible, but I mean, like really, like I'm pretty much from a few months into 2017, like, okay, how do we get rid of him? How do we get rid of him? He's not like it was like so. It's like when they go to like when they strike out, they like even just think that like they had a guy like Gio Urshela on the team, and he wasn't. He goes to the Yankees, and all of a sudden he's a borderline all-star level guy.
So, yeah, but remember we had Urshela when we had Donaldson.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Yeah. But I will say one thing though. One of the things that I've noticed is that I think the team is good at pulling the plug. In terms of just saying, you know what, we're done with this guy. He did not pan out. See you later. Whether that's necessarily a good thing as a managerial style, I'm not sure. I personally, just as a fan, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to see this guy anymore. I shudder every time so-and-so comes out of the bullpen. Primate, I know your favorite Delise. Every time he came out, and
I'm changing the channel.
But it's like, actually, I'd say Delise is probably the example of where they probably lasted or went too long with a guy.
Yeah.
But for most other guys, Brad Hand's the exact opposite, where they're like, you know what, you're not going to turn it around. Bye. Like, and
I didn't even have a chance to find a place here.
Exactly.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, these guys, they don't suffer from sunk cost fallacy you talk about, right? Like, you've already paid for it. This thing's not going to work out. Let's not keep him just because we've paid money for this guy.
Exactly.
And one thing I really liked about this year, okay, they got rid of Chatwood. They signed him, even if it's a few million. Like, they've been cutting guys left, right, and center. They cut Tulowitzki loose, regardless of how much money was owed. And, like, there's no point in hoping, right? Let's just move on. They've done that with a lot of guys. And the other good thing I really liked is this year, the intention was good. The best 25 guys came up north, went south, or stayed south.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to say. But, they could have kept Kirk down and added an extra year of control. He was one of the 2 best catches. He was on the team. And I thought that was really, really good.
The pulling the plug quickly thing, do you think that impacts, like, when you have those, like, mid-tier free agents, does that affect their decision at all when they're trying to decide whether they can come here or not? Like the fact that, they might not be able to kind of feel like have their struggles a little bit?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Most of the guys they pulled the plug on are short. Like, it's not like they're pulling the plug when the guy has 2 years left in his deal. Most of that, like, they're all like on the final year. Like Chatwood was a 1-year deal, right? Roark has this year left. I don't think they've ever pulled the plug where they just, unless you count like Tulo.
Russell Martin had a year left, I think.
Yeah, but they traded him.
They traded him, but
they swallowed money.
We did not get a return for Russell Martin.
No,
we got. I don't even remember who we got. Like,
we even stopped playing him for a bit. Had him manage a game.
Player coach. Yeah, player coach. And so it gets to the point where I'd call that pulling the plug. At the time, everybody was like, "Who the hell is what's a Julian Merriweather?" Right? Like when we got him for Donaldson.
Well.
Sure, it worked out as long as if he could stay healthy. But it's one of those things that it looked like, okay, well, he's better than the 0 we're going to get if we finish the season with Donaldson. That is what it looked like.
Yep.
So
I hope Merriweather can get healthy and just become like what. We talk about the bullpen. Those first 3 weeks in April, that was a dominant bullpen. The bullpen carried them through the month of April. But
I was just looking through our old videos, and like I think the first one that we did in the beginning of the season, like our thumbnail is the bullpen look nasty, and now it's like nasty in a different way.
It's still Phelps with a lot. Phelps and Merriweather, they lost their bullpen depth right there.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So here's the question about Donaldson. Now, here's a funny story. I think, Charles, you may have sent this one to me, or I sent it to you. It was something that Stoughton tweeted about how he wasn't well. By the time 2018 came along, he wasn't well liked, and when he got injured and went on the DL and went on his rehab, was rehabbing in Florida. Even before Vladdy got called up, some players took a Vladdy jersey and hung that in his locker.
Is that future Blue Jays third baseman?
Yeah.
Stroman, I think there are stories out there that he wasn't necessarily the best teammate. I mean, his behavior on Twitter was a little bit like the guy goes out there and tweets, "I'm the glue guy." I mean, who says that? I'm the glue guy. Like, nobody. If you're the glue guy, you're not saying you're the glue guy. Like,
yeah.
Well, I suspect that it's a lot of those moves were more. These guys really seem to buy into culture, and they're not just about extracting every last.
And you know what's interesting about that, though? Go back to 2015 and R.A. Dickey after the win in Texas where David Price comes out of the bullpen. And he's up there on the podium at the press conference talking about it's amazing what you can accomplish when, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. I can't remember what the exact quote is.
Yeah.
And all they talked about was the culture that Anthopoulos built and the guys who have stepped up, the Tulos and Donaldson and Bautista and Dickey, who were the leaders, and how there were no egos in that locker room. But then the stories like this come out. There were other stories that came out. Not that I don't wish bad on anybody, but Osuna does not deserve too much pity from me. But nonetheless, there were stories at the time in 2016 when Donald Trump won of people making, they're going to build the wall comments and stuff like that to Osuna. And, all sorts of things. And it's like, that's quite different than the dynamic we heard just a year prior when it was already Dickey praising just how great we all are and how kumbaya we all are.
Sometimes winning just creates that culture.
Yeah.
It was an ego-driven.
When you're winning, and when you're losing, it's a bad thing. So, I mean, it's a finicky thing with culture, right? You want a good culture. I mean, we all work in workplaces. We know the importance of a culture, but a lot of times you don't know, is it success, that's followed by culture, or culture like success follows culture, or the other way around? I don't know.
It's chicken and the egg scenario. But
Yeah.
it's funny because I never even I was always of the opinion that culture doesn't matter in baseball until I read Dirk Hayhurst's book, and I'm like, you know what? It probably does matter because you're spending so much time, and the season is so long that there's got to be some element of this, like, of it mattering, because the worst thing is having to go into work every day. And I'm like, we have our days where, you don't want to go in, but if it's like that on a daily basis, sure, I know you're playing a game, but it's got to matter in some way.
I think it matters a lot with a younger team in a way that, okay,
Yeah.
so for example, if you have these guys who've won and who've been there, and now you're going through a tough time and you're taking it out, and kids are taking it the wrong way, like you need a different kind of an adult in the room who can walk the kids through, right? Like, it's okay, or someone like, so I can see maybe, that's why Donaldson wasn't around, or Stroman.
But I will add, that was also, I will say, one of the best signings they did was Curtis Granderson, for that exact reason. Curtis has that reputation of being a great teammate and a leader in every team that he's been with. He always seemed like a humble guy every time he was interviewed. He actually had a pretty decent season with the Jays before we traded him, all of those things. But I'm almost certain that he was brought in addition to the talent and then plugging a hole for that locker room leader.
Yep.
Possibly. So Atkins swears by apparently this book called the Captain Class: Hidden Force That Create the World's Greatest Teams. It's been on my to-read list for like 4 years now, but I haven't gotten around. But apparently there are a few things that he's quoted a lot in the media from that book, and he thinks that and one of the players he always talks about when he talks about that culture is Biggio. Now, I don't know how important he is to the team's plans going forward. I don't really think so. But coming up, that's the kind of player they said they've always wanted. But then again, you could see him in a deal very soon.
Like, Simeon was one of those culture guys as well, right?
Yes, Simeon. Yeah. Springer as well, even though like he has the Houston cheating scandal, he was one of the few guys that was actually remorseful about it and apologized for it. Not all the players. A lot of the Houston players doubled down on their douchery. Like
Altuve?
Carlos Correa.
Yeah, him. Yeah. And wasn't Altuve a prick about it too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah.
It was like everyone's discounting us as if I'm like, no one's discounting you. People are just saying you're cheats. Like, you
cheated, like you did.
Alex Bregman was pretty vocal about it too.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think that part of the reason why they kept Gibbons on, which is very, very rare when the front office turns over and the manager stays that long, is because it was here's the thing. When it was a veteran team, Bautista, Edwin, like, you don't worry about like certain behavior because those guys they've been around, they know how to handle it. And I think Gibbons just knew how to manage those egos well. Mm-hmm. And he did that better than anybody. Like, he was able to like handle that. And then obviously once that core's run came to an end and whoever was left was going to be shipped out shortly after, they decided to make the change. But I think that's likely what John Gibbons did best, even though we never got to see it. the fact that he was able to manage all sorts of like big personalities. Like, these are big personalities on that team. That's probably why fans gravitated to them so well. But they're not always easy to work with, right? So we just pay our money and see them flip bats and start bench clearing balls and all that stuff, and it's great. But day in, day out, traveling with them and grinding with them and dealing with those when you're like feeling like shit in the middle of August and you got Donaldson chirping all the time, it may not be the best personality to have there. So, I mean, it's about the mix, right? So
And then I'll go back also to the Osuna thing. That will blow up a locker room culture real quick.
Yeah.
You start getting alligator, or there's a name that doesn't get up anymore, is Chris Colabello, right? With
Forgot about him.
yeah, and all the PEDs and all the stuff with him. Obviously, on to save face, Ross Atkins is like, oh yeah, of course we support him, yada yada yada. And then a month later, they cut him. But you know, that will divide a locker room. Maybe not Colabello as much. That's kind of one of those things of like he's dealing with that himself. But the Osuna thing, that will. And I mean, we saw it with Houston, right? Where Verlander was pretty vocal about it. Then all of a sudden, he's got egg on his face because he's got this guy on his team.
Yep.
So,
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're running a little long,
Yep.
but to cap it off, I think it'll be good to get your grades on the last 6 years and where you think the front office stands. So, Azam, I'm going to start with you. A letter grade, as if we're in school. What are you giving them?
I'm going to give them a B plus. I think it's pretty solid. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
B
So
plus, yeah.
I'd say B plus. It's been pretty solid.
Pramit? Sorry, I don't know why I called Pramit Azam. I was looking at that. That's why it got
yeah,
confusing.
okay.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be watching by this point, so it's all good.
I'll give them a B. A solid B.
Charles?
Yeah, I was at the same a B. I was very much, it was reminiscent of my UTM where it was a D to begin with and it kind of worked its way up. So yes, we're definitely, I think a B is a good grade for them. And as I said earlier, I'm excited to see them keep pushing it.
And last question for you guys: where's the grass stand for Rogers Center? Is that dead?
I don't think it's a priority.
I think that's dead.
I think it's dead.
I think the next, I guess, what's next is
New stadium.
Yeah, what's the status on that? I suspect that they leaked it just to get public opinion on it, and now it's. We talked about it a lot in the winter. I mean, then I guess it was a good time to leak something like that because people wanted something exciting and positive to talk about, and then gone back.
Quickly, I know we're running late. Have any of you guys been to Cleveland? Because I haven't been.
Yes.
So one of the things Shapiro was credited with is turning that ballpark around and, adding amenities, adding all sorts of those things. And I think, obviously, we saw it with the player development, as you talked about it earlier with player development. Obviously, we've got the facility. It's promising to think of the possibilities of what could happen. With the Rogers Center or Skydome. And I'm hopeful that grass is a possibility. I know the turf has improved. Selfishly, I'd like Aramark kicked out and get some decent food in there. But it's in a prime location. That there is a lot of possibility of what they could do to develop around there. So I'm curious to see what they can do going forward.
No, for sure. And one of the things that Shapiro and those guys have been pretty good, even with they've been able to extract more out of the same Rogers Center building than the previous regime was able to, right? Like part of it is dynamic pricing and things like that. So they've done a lot of good stuff, and those were the kind of amenities. Personally, I didn't really like the progressive field. It's at an intersection, man. It's like one of I don't. But one of the things that we see, I think the newish ballparks that you see, like the Target Field or even the PNC Park, those are good examples of even a Yankee Stadium is new, but I would rather Jays focus more what it looks like for in Minnesota or Pittsburgh, because I don't think you have that 50,000 capacity anymore, and it's a pure baseball ballpark and doesn't look like a concrete jungle. But So from that standpoint, I would like to see a newer stadium, but I would prefer the same location. I think it's a fantastic location.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get to. Like we talked about this when we did that show when they were talking about the new stadium, and like it's in such an easy location to get to from so many areas that moving it I think would be a mistake unless you're right around the same area.
Mhm.
But I just
I can hear the horn from my when I'm watching games. So a couple of times I knew a home run was coming before I saw it on TV.
That's
And
the
what's
worst.
funny, I didn't hear it before. I hear it now. So I don't know if the horn is louder this year or what. So I've heard like the George Springer 3-run home run against Boston that I heard the horn go off about a minute before I saw the home run get hit on TV.
Oh wow!
Oh man, this is something big.
They're trying to attract your attention to get you to the stadium. That's what it is.
Hey, I hope to go more in the near future this month.
I'm going on Sunday. I'm hoping it means something.
Nice.
Nice.
It's gonna be my
And
first
if
game.
If they lose, we're blaming you, Charles.
Yeah, sounds good.
If Robbie Ray stays, I'm buying one of the Robbie Ray shirts.
Oh, those are great. Those are awesome
Really good
shirts.
shirts. Yeah.
You know what I didn't realize when you sent it to me yesterday, Premit, was he's the one that put it out.
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
And
Yeah.
it goes to Jay's care.
Yep.
I didn't
was
know
like,
that.
yeah, I didn't know that either. I saw the shirt and I was like, that's amazing. But yeah,
I think it's time to put those pants up on the level of excellence.
It's amazing how everybody's looking. Toronto fans look for these little tidbits. Like, oh, if he got him, maybe he's gonna stay. Or like Kawhi Leonard is at a J. Oh, he's gonna stay. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's always looking for this little hint, and it's ultimately gonna come down to money. Like in the NBA, it's more location driven, but it's gonna be money.
I sent the shirt to my wife yesterday, and her reaction was, "We sacrificed Kyle Lowry's donk so we could get Robbie Ray's ass." And I was like, "There we go. That's beautiful."
Yeah, I mean, I'll because I'm gonna get a personal trainer this month to go on a weight training program, and they asked me, "What are your fitness goals?" I'm gonna show them a picture of Robbie.
There you go. That's it.
Pants.
I want that.
I want to fill out these pants the way Robbie Ray
I
does.
want that ass.
Show them a picture of Lowry too. Just let them choose between the two.
But I think Lowry's is like chunky, and he had to lean it down, whereas Ray's is like he squatted his way to that.
So you know what you got to do? You got to bulk up first. You got to put on some weight and then lean it down and get the Lowry ass.
Huh. That's fucking... Speaking of Robbie Ray pitcher of the month, you know who else won pitcher of the month in the NL? Wainwright.
Did he really?
Yeah.
39-year-old Adam Wainwright. Or is he 40 now?
Let's see. He's born August 30th, 81. He just turned 40 a few days ago.
There you go.
Wow. Players are definitely going a lot later now.
He threw a Maddox not too long ago.
Yeah, what's his contract?
Yeah, I think it was like a month ago or something, right?
Yeah, 39-year-old Adam Wainwright is throwing a Maddox to Yadi. It's like, what year is it?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, guys, I think that's a good spot to leave it off. I would have liked to have finished it with Robbie Ray's ass, but I mean, we threw in the Wainwright stuff.
There we go.
Charles, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm sure I speak for the other guys when I say like you're welcome anytime. Just let us know.
Absolutely.
We'll talk some baseball. I'll sit back.
Maybe
and
a retro
enjoy
end
the-
of season retrospective, hopefully in late October, not in early October.
All right.
Yeah, or a playoff like watch party or something.
Sounds great.
3 hours on this.
No, but people don't even listen to us for 10 minutes. I don't know if they're going to make 3 hours. All right. So if you've made it this far, thanks. Like I don't. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Comment as always. Like the video and subscribe. And we'll see you probably in a week. Either talking some Jays or talking some Raptors. Or we missed the opportunity to talk about Ben Simmons, but I mean we'll save that for another day.
No, I don't think it's happening, but that'll be next.
No,
time.
not for the Raptors, but I'm just in general. It's an interesting situation.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. You got to say thank you.
Thank you.